Lugnut TV. Glad to steal you away once again. Been a while since we've been on air, or at least on the YouTube side of things. You have always heard my voice, Jeff Wood. Welcome back, Katie Dugas, and say hi, Katie.
Hi, Katie.
All right, well, we're 2 weeks in to our series here at Loose Lugnuts Racing. Been an up and down type of thing. So let's start with the trucks. And, in the first week, so that's where we had our huge problems, right? And everyone knows how that affected the racing. And I don't think, Mitch Reeves, winner of that Thursday first truck race, first season opener there at Auto Club, but we had some graphical glitch issues going on. Uh, Bouncing people out with low quality, I think, ended up being the deal. Uh, I'm not sure what the ultimate sacrifice there from iRacing, what they did, or if it was even on the driver's end. Katie, you hear anything about that?
I know it was an absolute nightmare in our house. From what I heard, on the iRacing side, it sounded like it had a lot to do with the peak finale because a lot of people, I guess, gained interest in this and more people were looking into it. The servers were just so overloaded that it just kept kicking people. Well, over that weekend, in our household personally, it kicked all 3 nights. So we thought maybe it was one of our internet issues or an issue with the track. But I don't know that they narrowed it down to a definite answer other than the servers being a little overloaded.
Yeah, who knows? I definitely don't. I didn't hear. I know Ron and the guys put up some rooms and they tested. I think they concluded that it was either Auto Club or, like you said, the Peak Series, and then they had another championship night on Friday and Saturday night. And I'm not even sure what was wrong with Sunday night. It was just wrong. But we still raced. We still had successful races. Broadcasting on American Sim Network on Thursdays and Saturdays there. The Xfinity Series. So the first Xfinity win, I believe, went to Keith Haney. A little bit of a rule thing there with, but we worked all that out. It is what it is. Moving forward, it was still a great race to call. And I think it made the opener because we get to Sunday, broadcasted by Max Speed TV with both Katie and myself up there calling that race. Still some issues, but we had 3 different winners in the first week, which I think is phenomenal racing too, despite the problems. You don't like to see the same old,
Yeah, we definitely like to shake things up. And, we kind of said it in the beginning of the season, right after our close of our, I'm going to say, off season. We kind of gave you some names to watch out for. And some of these guys have definitely come out and shown that they're not going to play when it comes to that. So I think over the next couple of weeks, we're going to start seeing, our drivers see their comfort zone, where they think they're going to prevail at, whether it be the trucks, the Xfinity, the Cup, or possibly try to sweep all three. Who knows?
Yeah, and we got a couple drivers out there that are capable of that. And we'll get into the second week, and also Katie's hitting on some future topic here, but again, further on in this podcast. Uh, so, week number 2 shows up. Bugs are worked out, or at least we think they are. Thursday, we go into Las Vegas. We had a little bit of cautioning at Auto Club, and it didn't turn out like I thought it did. If you tuned into those broadcasts, Max Speed TV, ASN, we were, saying fuel mileage races, but the cautions came into effect. Now, uh, Thursday at Vegas, it did about the same thing. I think that's where we saw probably a lot more cautions than what we intended, and and we saw our first repeat winner too, because Justin Michael said Sunday and Thursday that he wanted that race, and he did, a phenomenal job. I think we went to overtime. That was our first overtime race, and it was at Vegas, mile-and-a-half track. Katie, it's just you're bound to come across some problems there. I think even in your household, like you say, Top misplaced his car or truck at one point, and just stuff happens. You just run into problems at Vegas, and plus I want to note we started with such huge fields. It has not died down, Katie. Week number 2, Vegas trucks, we had 37 trucks log in.
Yeah, it has been an absolute show every night. A lot of these races, I mean, they're full within I know last night I said 12 minutes, but within, an hour long practice, literally by the time we were halfway in, these drivers are maxed out. That first Sunday night race at Auto Club, I mean, we had some of our biggest names that weren't able to make it in because not only is I'm going to say Lugnuts becoming such I feel like prestige is the wrong word, but I mean, the word's getting out there. These guys are phenomenal drivers. And if anything, they want to be a part of this series.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate for what I'm about to say for drivers viewing, and we thank everyone for viewing ASN, Max Speed TV, Lugnut TV, however you're coming across Loose Lugnuts Racing. I hope you enjoy the show. You see what battles we can present, the excitement from time to time, the ups and downs of drivers. It does happen every race, and for some drivers at a more consistent rate, Ronald Klein. So out there, if you're viewing and you're like, I want to join Loose Lug Nuts, unfortunately, we're for our 3 main series that I know of, we're closed. These are our drivers. There's 185 of them still signed up for Loose Lug Nuts. I'm sure that's going to drop at the end of the season even further. But view March, springtime in the south, and beginning of the end of winter up north. So that time frame right there will be probably the next recruitment area that we'll get into with Loose Lug Nuts Racing. And that's not official either. Don't take my word for it. I get informed by Ron and John just the same as the rest of us. Uh, so look for that time frame. However, the dirt side of things, and Katie can speak more to it, they're shifting over to their own league. It's still Loose Lug Nuts Racing, but it's the dirt tour, so they can come over there and have their own numbers and not worry about the guys that have been here for 5-6 years now stepping on their numbers. Katie, anything on that?
I know our two admins, Top and Brandon, we're kind of waiting until our finale at Knoxville that we had this past week to get together and, not just throw a bunch of tracks together. Really think about this, see what kind of tracks we want to run, how many laps, get all the bugs worked out so we can put a schedule out there. And if anything, Lug Nuts is known for being, I say, more like a business side of things. So they don't want to put a schedule out there and then have to have a bunch of changes or, change up a whole bunch of stuff because something wasn't right. So I think within the next week or two, you will see a schedule drop. But, we do have an extra page for the 2019 Lugnut Dirt Tour. So if you haven't had a chance to log on and add yourself to that page, do go on, put what number you want. And like I said, be watching for the schedule soon for sure.
All right, yeah, we'll try and get that linked up down in the description here on YouTube, along with all our other stuff out there. We got, the Facebook page. We're officially moved over to a new Facebook page that allows us to do a little bit more as admins and interact and message and whatever it may be. But new Facebook page, I'm sure we got the majority of people over there. If you haven't and you're listening, please get over there. That's where all the information is now. But also with sponsors who will their links will be in the description. I want to give a big shout out to them. Obviously, our Sunday Cup Series sponsor, Abruzzi Racewear USA, your wear, your way. Little slogan there. Go check them out. Big thanks to Judd Danielson and that group at Abruzzi for helping sponsor the Cup Series. Been a phenomenal show. We'll talk about week number 2 with them coming up. Pit Pass, obviously, Katie. We'll get to your Pit Pass segment there, but without Katie, I don't think we would have the information we do. We got some new features on the podcast, and obviously, before this podcast gets aired, Katie will be posting some power rankings that we'll talk about. RaceGear.com. You see it on Mitch Reeves' car. There's a couple other cars out there that have it on it. Probably Ron Klein, that group from Over the Top Motorsports. Thanks to them, and thanks to Race Gear for that. Over the Top Paints and Designs. John Hendricks' little paint shop there. He paints phenomenal cars, as does Katie. But John, longtime painter, big shout out to him, helping out the league where he can. Halloween race coming up. let John know if you need a paint now. Don't, go, oh, it's Halloween week, it's special event week. Get to John now, tell him what you want. Donate if you can. Donations are always helpful. They go back into the league for helping racing. Lugnut TV, we're on Lugnut TV. Thank you, Lugnut TV. You're welcome. So MaxSpeed TV, ASN also sponsoring. Thank you out there. So moving on into the week number 2 of Xfinity at Vegas. Yes, we're doing Vegas. So another repeat. Mitch Reeves, I mean, the man just keeps on winning, and it's going to help him in those said power rankings too, Katie. But it was still a good race. A little bit, crowded at times on the track and elsewhere on that track at Vegas on Saturday, but the racing was good. And the Xfinity car, unlike, I think it's closer to the truck, but unlike the Cup car, the Xfinity car is a driver's car. And Top had his best race of the year there, so your household was excited. But a lot of guys, really excelled at, actually having to drive the car rather than drive the draft.
Yeah, if I've heard him say anything over all, I'm not just going to say dirt series, but across all of these asphalt series, he says the K&N car, I mean, not the K&N, the Xfinity car drives more like the real thing. So I definitely got to see a good finish. I was really hoping for a top 3. That's just me personally. But yes, phenomenal run. Ran, I mean, top 3 to 5 all night long. So it was definitely a good night for him. I'm going to say it. I'm partial. I'm ready to see this guy not only get on the podium, but I really would like to see him get a win. The hours and stuff that he's poured in have been insane. But, he's got a lot of big names with him this season. And, I mean, all these guys are gunning for that championship diecast. So it's going to be tough for sure.
And I think overall, I mean, there was still 35 to 40 cars that logged in that night. I think officially 34 may have taken the green flag. So again, another semi-full race surface there, and only 2 cautions. With the cars able to spread out, not catch up. There was minimal cautions, and I think there was more green flag pit stop events there. So that was exciting. But we get into Sunday. Uh, we've been seeing a Bruzy Raceware, so yeah, they sponsor the Cup Series, and again, shout out to them, MaxSpeed TV covering that broadcast. We went into Sunday, and me and you were sitting up in their booth. We're calling the race, and we were seeing the first 50 laps. Let's talk about that. We'd go 10 to 15 laps, and then we'd see a caution, and they weren't big cautions unless you were in the caution, obviously. And that was that. 2, 3 car wrecks, and the 43 car field again 2 weeks in a row. I'm clapping right here for the drivers that want to log in and race this. Not everyone got to. Just say that. So first 50 laps of 105 scheduled laps, and I say scheduled for a reason. They were, up and down. I would say people were par, if you want to go to golf terms on that, and that's what it was. And then the next 55 laps, phenomenal. Green flag, pit stops, and then there was a weird caution, and I know T Rowdy probably got the worst of it, you know, damage wise. But at this point in the race, we're at lap 102 of 105. Let's say, I can't remember exactly. Justin Michael is, ran away with this. Keith Haney's probably second. Mitch Reeves had fallen back to about seventh. There was a couple other guys I'm probably forgetting. Kevin Winter was in that mix too. And then that caution happened, and we all knew what was going to happen. Green, white, checkered was signaled, and we had 3 attempts at that. And these guys had been out on the longest run all night, tires and whatnot. And guess what happens come to the first green flag, Katie?
Let's just say chain reaction. One brief slip up, and it takes out, I'm going to say, half to 3/4 of the entire field. Second green, white, checkered attempt coming at you.
Yeah, and that's about the same thing. I think they get half a lap into it. or no, it was right before the leaders took the white and the yellow came out on the second attempt, and that was a big wreck too. Someone just didn't make it off of four. Tires were crazy during that one lap. We saw Trey Galgan like shoot up the speedway, but nevertheless, the caution came out. Some nights were ruined at that point too, and we go for attempt number three. And attempt number three, at this point, Justin Michael's already been passed. He's no longer the leader. Kevin Winter's probably back dangling around 14th. Um, Mitch Reeves didn't make a weird move onto pit road this time, so he was safe there. I don't know. And, you know, a guy that's been there all week ends up winning the race. Kyle Chadwick, he did everything he could to put himself in the best position. I think the best car didn't win that night, obviously, with Justin Michael. I would say he would have been the best, and there was a couple other guys out there like Dylan Ackert, Keith Haney, that all had probably great runs, but unable to finish due to the aero package, tires, how you're able to go about stuff on that racing surface that night, or at least at the end of that race. So the guy that finishes top 10, Kyle Chadwick, wins the race. Mark Jackson gets top 3 again. So, I mean, guys that, had nerve-wracking battles through those green-white checkers, survived. And that was that race. And what a race to call, too, because you didn't know which way it was going to go, Katie.
Yeah, you definitely didn't. I know I had to watch once or twice at that ending because I mean it was phenomenal to see Mark Jackson come out second night in a row with a top three. I gotta say, love this guy to death. He puts, I mean, his entire heart and soul into this car. So, like I said last night, the guy did it for Dale 2 nights in a row. So, I think that's yet again that's going to be another guy you want to keep an eye on this season.
All right, well, this coming week that we're talking on here and recording, we got Richmond, and I'm gonna say this is probably Kevin Winter's best chance. I know he's really good at Richmond. We'll see who else shows up to the short track, but we're gonna see more cautions. I want to prepare people for that. Richmond is really rough, coming off of turn two and off of turn four too, depending on the weather conditions too. That's another factor to roll into that. What simulated weather conditions we have again. So be prepared. A little bit more cautions, I think. Short track racing, you're going to see bump to moves, guys messing up out of turn two on trying to get back to the gas a little bit early, getting back to that gas way too early out of turn four and turning left down the speedway at the fastest part. It's going to be a wild ride. We're all going to be there for it across ASN and Max Speed TV. So we got the trucks on Thursday, Xfinity on Saturday, Cup on Sunday. Schedule doesn't change. But, so we'll maybe have some of those guys up for an interview too. Done with talking about Lugnut racing here for a second. But, the NASCAR world, though, Katie, has, since we last talked, been to Talladega, been to Kansas, knocking off some drivers. I think they're in the top 8. Let's go back to the Dega race because there was some, controversy there too, and we can kind of flip it over to our races. The Dega race, obviously, rain delay, and in that rain delay, I saw one of the dumbest things I've ever seen, and that was all the Chevy guys get together and have a meeting. And if that's not bad for NASCAR, I don't know what is, because they came out and they're like, "Oh, we're going to talk about that new Corvette," and I was like, "What are you? I'm just here so I don't get fined." That was basically the speech, and it angered me. Katie, how did you feel about it?
It made me want to go buy a Corvette. I'll say that.
No, but like they come out, they interview Chase Elliott there, and it was just awful. Like they didn't want to say what they were talking about. Obviously, we saw the manufacturers line up. We saw a tandem thing there at Dega, where two Fords got out and did the 2x2. They have these huge rear spoilers, you know, plastics and whatnot. It's not the big black bat wing on the back, but it helps with the downforce. It keeps them there. The speeds are maintained to a point. I just don't know uh, if we're going track to track and we're only promoting, rather than the driver and the sponsor, they're only promoting the manufacturer, Chevy, Ford, Toyota, whatever it may be. And I know NASCAR is trying to make that attempt to uh, make their cars look more like what real world cars are with the Chevy, and obviously the Super down on the Xfinity side. I think the Super's I'm not sure what they're using up on the Toyota. I think they're still using the Camrys, and then it just it boggles me that's the way NASCAR wants to lean and allow. I know it's mostly towards just the super speedways, but if it went beyond that and we're only talking about Chevy, Ford, uh, Toyota, it's gonna kill the sponsor side of it. Sponsors are hard enough to get in NASCAR. I don't know, Katie. You got any else thing on that?
Yeah, I'll actually go a little step further. Say you do decide to go to Ford, Chevy, Toyota. What's that going to do for your guys like Joe Gibbs, Dale Jr.? I mean, the big guys who sponsor all this. If it turns to the point where you only have three separate teams, think of the guys that I'm going to say you have to beat every week. You go out there and ultimately, yeah, you're going to run with your team. But if you're narrowed down to only three teams versus what, 14, 15, I mean, what kind of show is this going to put on for these guys? Oh, well, I have 18 teammates, so, I really need to watch out. I can't put a door to them, things like that. That's going to kill the motivation of the sport. Some people, and I'm not naming names, but my dad, some people live for the wrecks in NASCAR because that's what they watch. My 5-year-old gets so excited when there's a wreck. And I know that sounds bad, but pow into the wall and he's all excited. But if you don't have that competition going week in and week out, what are you really watching for? I mean, if you're going to be a car salesman, go be a car salesman. But if you're going to drive for NASCAR, you go out and put on the best damn show you can every week and try to beat everybody in that field.
Well said. Can't say anything better. So NASCAR went away from that. I believe I think it was the number 12 one Dega there, and then we go into Kansas on the NASCAR side of things, and it was a good race, and whatnot, but no controversies like Dega. I mean, there was even controversy at Dega with the truck side of things, going below the line, and Dale Earnhardt went on a spiel about that, and if NASCAR is interfering with a final call of the race, uh, what's that say to the integrity of the finish? And people may try to pull that over into loose lugnuts. Why does loose lugnuts not? And I saw this out there on the Facebook page. And it's a good thing to bring up and talk about. It's in the rules. Ron's wrote the rules through, and it's there. But if you go below the line to make a pass, other than to avoid, you know, uh, a wreck or a slow car at that point, I guess at some standard, it's an illegal move on the league side. But in NASCAR, it's a little bit different, I guess. Not really. It, you keep giving those guys more surface to race with, and this is where I differ with Dale Earnhardt Jr. Is it? He's like, well, they already crash enough. If you let them go down there, it's just extending it. But my thing is, you keep giving these guys racing surface. It doesn't matter if they're the best driver in the world. They're going to use every bit of racing surface that they're legally allowed to, and it's going to create more problems. I think the car package is the biggest problem versus, there's no innovation in NASCAR right now, like there was in the 70s and early 80s. The stock cars stock, and there's no cool configurations like Richard Petty coming out there with a big wing Pontiac. It's you can't give those guys any more uh, what than what you got right now, especially with speedway racing the way it is. I don't know, Katie. Do you see it? try to imagine NASCAR guys going below that white line on a flat surface versus a curved surface, up and down. I mean, they did it at Kansas just fine, but that really wasn't, you know, nose to tail, 10 deep pack racing.
Yeah, I mean, I know they're going to use the space, and like I said, I've watched NASCAR as a kid. I'm slowly transitioning back into that because I'm watching a lot of practices, a lot of qualifying, things like that. So I'm learning the more you get in that speed, the more momentum you're going to have. So if there is such an uneven surface, and I did see this a lot at Kansas, when they would go down, a lot of times when they would come back up off that apron, I mean, they lose a lot of, I'm not going to say traction, but they can get extremely squirrely. And in my opinion, that's going to breed for a little more caution. But with the guys at Lugnuts saying we're going to run the same rules as NASCAR, I mean, that to me, that's black and white. There's really no gray there. Either you follow it or you don't. That's the best way to put it. They do this because they don't make exceptions for just anybody. I mean, you get a black flag, you get a black flag. They don't clear them because, like I said, you do it for one person, you're going to have to do it for everybody through the season. And frankly, I think that's going to come back and bite you. So, with these guys having the limitations on rules the way they do, I personally respect that because this is run more like a business. And to me, that's what keeps this league going.
All right. Well, that's our little NASCAR talk there. I don't think there was anything, controversial. Go out there, look at your top 8 drivers. There isn't like a surprise name in there. It's not like a, mattress firm, from years back put in one car and Kurt Busch got in. So there's no surprise in NASCAR to me. There's no incredibly great guy other probably than Matt Benedetto. I was surprised. Actually, I want to keep talking about NASCAR because I was surprised that Ricky Stenhouse, a guy that's never made the big races out there, he got another ride for next year. And people were defending him and didn't like the way he got released from his contract, but you would release a football player from their contract too if he wasn't producing the stats or wasn't putting you in the best position to win races. I don't know, Katie. For guys looking for rides, for wanting rides at NASCAR as we wind down the NASCAR season, some people deserve the rides. I don't think Ricky Stenhouse is a bad driver. I think he's accident prone for sure, but you know it is the top level of the sport, and things are bound to happen consistently to some person at some point. I think there's some good young guys out there. Benedetto, I'm forgetting some names out there that haven't really got their chance in a good ride with good equipment.
We did kind of touch on this whenever we had our Deegan Decker talk that, whenever you do take some drivers like that who, and, like you said, they don't necessarily deserve to be in that position. There's a lot of missed opportunities when it comes to that because there will be drivers that they have all of the skill, all of the talent. They just don't have the equipment. They might be running a lower class with some of these big guys hand me downs. I mean, just piecing together cars to get a ride for that week and never knowing what's coming next. So to me, that's at the point where you look at, what drivers should be in these rides, who should we get for next season. So yeah, I frankly believe that there are some people who are looked over that need that ride. And ultimately, I get it, it's the drive, it's the owner's discretion, but I do believe that there are plenty of looked over and missed opportunities when it comes to a ride in NASCAR.
All right, yeah. It just popped in my head. I wanted to go over it real quick. It was the last bit of news I can remember off the top of my head. But yeah, so we're going to go over into our Pit Pass section. And before we get to those power rankings from Pit Pass, Katie, you had an interview out there. You posted it. I've read it. Talk about it real quick.
This I was so excited about. I got to interview Keegan Leahy, the second place finisher in the NASCAR Peak, the NASCAR Peak Series. Let me get that right. I got to talk to him a little bit last week. Incredible interview. And, kind of seeing a pro's insight on this. We do get to see our share of pro drivers, not just on the asphalt, but on the dirt as well. But to get somebody like that and see how they, how they function in the sim world or what they look for. And I was extremely floored. This guy was so laid back and just one of the easiest people to talk to. And, we hear a lot of people talk about I ratings. And, you know, I went through and I did my research. I looked at his I rating and it's way up there. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, go look at it. It's impressive. I pulled up his stats and he said, you know what? We don't really care. We don't look at that. And, he kind of joked at the end of the interview. He said, you know what? He said, the only numbers I look at are the dollar signs. Yeah, you worry about your I rating when it comes to trying to get into the series. But once you get up there, it's just another number. But he did tell me he had his opportunity and, you know, I asked the question that I'm sure a lot of people wondered. Now that he got to sit back and look at the replay and see that he was that close to winning it, would you have doored him? Frankly, I know somebody sitting over my shoulder would have doored him. But this guy has an unbelievable degree in physics. And when I tell you he analyzed everything, he told me exactly where that car was at exactly every position. And I mean, it's just second nature to him. He pinpointed, if I was to turn him here, this is what would happen, or if I would have done it here. And he said at the end of the day, the better guy won it. He was better on the long runs. On the short runs. So he was just glad to come in second.
Yeah, interesting interview out there. Go read it at Pit Pass, presented by ASN on the Facebook page. Pit Pass is probably a good look up there on Facebook. If you're wondering, hit the the like button on it and stay tuned for all the interviews. I think Kay's got another one coming up very shortly. But let's go over. I'm gonna hit the transition button here. Bam! Power ranking time. Loose Lugnuts weekly. I'm hoping it's weekly. Maybe every other week. Depends as we start this up. But weekly power rankings, and me and Katie sat down after the race last night, and probably before the race too. We were talking about who is our top 10. Really, we came up with a top 5, Katie. So, and my bottom 5 probably differs from your bottom. What was bottom 5? Why did I say bottom 5? My 5 to watch, or however we have it here. So the Loose Lugnuts weekly power rankings brought to you by Pit Pass and Katie Dugas. We shared a little bit of information, Katie, and it was statistically, how did I put it? College football, I think so. But there's 43 plus drivers. How are you supposed to rank 43 guys with, that some of them don't even run but one night? It was difficult unless you were the top 5 guys in the series, and that's where we found ourselves with this first power ranking. And this is not to say it won't change, and I think it will change the 5 to watch at least week to week, depending on how their week went. Really, there's a guy in there, but let's look at the top 5 really quick. Transition that over there, bam. So power rankings, who's got it going on? Katie, take us away with our top 5.
This was actually extremely difficult for our top two. I know I was, rather torn between the two, but at the end of the day, Mitchell Reeves has come out of the gate. And when I say 9 to nothing, this guy races on the drag strip. So he lit it up and he was ready to go. To me, that is your first guy sitting on the top of the power rankings. Justin Michael, we knew was going to be a force to be reckoned with this season. And like I said, we said early on, your 3 guys you need to watch out for. The third guy we had talked about watching for was Randy Arms. He did not get to make all of our races yet this season. I know he had some actual life races going on. But third place, Kyle Chadwick, he has been, very consistent. He's coming off of a championship, got the win last night in Vegas after starting on the pole. So Kyle Chadwick sitting in third and Keith Haney sitting in fourth. Keith Haney told the guys, I believe it was Saturday night, I'm coming for that win on Sunday. I'm going to do it. And after that series of 3 failed green white checkered attempts, he still ended up coming out with a good finish. He still got a top five, but those are going to be your top five as to who's got it going on this week.
Yeah, and I don't think me and you had much of a difference on this. Mitch Reeves, Justin Michael, like you said, obviously 1, 2, they could have flopped. I think just based statistically on, I think Justin Michael would have won that race Sunday, which he would have. It would have been, it'd have been his number one spot, but he fell back due to tires and the racing style that ended that. So Kyle Chadwick, I had him at number 5 just based on his top tens alone. If you haven't watched his racing, he has not scored outside the top 10 over the first 6 races of this winter season. But Keith Haney's got to win himself there over Randy Arms. And Randy Arms has been on the pole. He's been top, bottom, top, bottom. Just has to put it together. He's put together some good strings of races of top 10s. He almost won the first race. Mitch Reeves and him doored at Auto Club on the final lap. And that shot Randy Arms out of the top 10 finishing. So that's our top 5. And now let me get this image already up here. These are the people to watch, and I'm going to say our 6th through 10th place in the top 10 power rankings, but just this week alone. And me and Katie actually differ, but Katie, go ahead with your people to watch.
Yeah, I couldn't mathematically do this as, power rankings for this part. This was kind of my guys that I want to sit back and I want to watch over the next week, see what happens. Mark Jackson put together 2 amazing runs. Like I said, back to back top threes. The guy's a force to be reckoned with when he can get on those runs. I can see he's more of a super speedway guy. I think he's the biggest competition whenever it's going to come to big tracks like that. But I want to keep an eye on him. I want to keep an eye on Brandon Murray because, frankly, when this guy's got his head in the game and doesn't wind up in the trouble or, wind up in a caution or, maybe drive down onto the apron and then spin out in the middle of the racetrack, no offense. But Jeff Merck, I know, had quite a few issues the first week, but over the week at Vegas, I watched this guy fall under 2 cautions. I mean, literally drop almost to the back of the pack and still drive his way up into the top 10 to top 15, you know, even having a caution. He is coming for that 3rd championship. I know he said more than anything he wants it. He's not racing for wins, he's racing for consistency. So, this is a guy you definitely need to watch out for. Chris Shaw, amazing finishes. Definitely one of those that got hung up in some trouble, but I think this guy has what it takes in the long run. And my 5th one I kind of toyed with just a little bit, but I'm going to say Kevin Winter. I know that was another one that had some connection issues that first week, but Kevin Winter has one of the most, I can't say most dedication, but some of the strongest dedication to this league. He has also gotten in a lot of cautions, a lot of trouble, but we're still early on. I know he's wanting that championship, and if anything, this guy will get into tunnel vision, and he can see the end of the championship in sight, and I think that is going to push him even further coming off of the caution weeks to get a little bit of extra push and definitely try to get up to the front across all 3 series.
Yep, and it really comes down to what you know what we put our heads together, me and Katie, and she comes up with this list, and it's perfectly fine. It's her power rankings, people. If you got any ideas, hey, just put your hand up and say, hey, I've scored 2 top 10s this week. Why ain't I there? Cool. We'll put a stronger focus on you and to maybe the guys we had on there last week. But like I said, mine actually differed from Katie, which is perfectly fine. Yours is going to differ from ours, anyways. It's just viewer's choice at this point, and we do view a lot of racing. But like I had Bob Wells in there. He's raced 3 races, finished inside the top 10 each of those 3 races. I had Jeff Merck in there. Chris Shaw I had in there because he had some great finishes, and like you said, for the long term for Chief Shaw there, he may not be a flashy driver, may not be up front every time, but he took, in my mind, because Jeff Gilmore didn't stick around on Sunday. He took Jeff Gilmore's spot in my top 10 drivers, just based on that stat. And then I had a tie for my 10th place guys, or 5 guys to watch. I had people like Jason Lance, who only runs on Saturdays with the Xfinity. He's up there in points, and then I had Tyler Needham with that tie, who also only runs on Sundays, and he's top 10 in points after the first 2 races. So, uh, obviously, like I said, it's going to differ, but Katie gets the final word. So let's see how this develops, Katie. I think it's going to be fun playing with the names, because heck, what if Mitch Reeves drops off, has like 5 bad races? I think he'd find himself outside of that, top finishers. It all can change week to week, and especially with the people to watch. That's going to be fun going forward. Let's see. Other than that, Katie, I think that's the only news. People are going to see about it before they hear about it here on the podcast. We still got some work to do editing wise. Uh, but it's been fun. It's been fun back on, Lugnut TV, getting it, seeing what's going on, talking about it, because that's all me and Katie do is talk. Katie, going forward here at Richmond, like I said this week, I mentioned, possibly sitting back and getting used to a little bit of a cautioning type thing. What are you looking at?
I have to agree 1,000%. I think you're going to see quite a few cautions, but I think you need to watch names like Randy Arms, Kevin Winter, because these guys are made for short tracks. We did get to see it a little bit in our bump and run series. They were extremely good on these short tracks. So, watch out for some of those names, but, I don't want to be negative, Nancy, but I do see this being, a lot of cautions.
All right. I always like to be surprised. Maybe the drivers will shape it up. But we're expecting big fields once again. If you're not aware, Richmond is, for the top 10 drivers, the final. You want to get good points after Richmond, because we'll have a 1 week break after Richmond for our Halloween Bash, a spooktacular race, or whatever it's called nowadays. So we'll have a special event race. There are specific rules for that special event race, so be aware of it. We'll be live on Max Speed TV for that special event race, myself and Katie. So it'll be super fun. But those drivers that are listening right now, get your points ready. If you're a former diecast special event winner, you need to go run the open. I believe is the new rule involved in there, and only a certain amount of people are being transferred, and only certain people are inside those top tens, division top tens will be moved up to the main race. So get all ready for that. We're going to go ahead and end the Lugnut TV podcast. We'll hopefully be back next week, if not the week after that. Stay tuned for more info. Always stay tuned to the Facebook page. Check out the links in the descriptions. Thank you to our sponsors, John Hedrick, Ronald Klein, everything that makes this league go round. We'll see everyone next time here at Lugnut TV.